About 6 months ago or so, I did a video on 25 movies for Grindhouse beginners, and people seem to like it, so let's do another one. I've picked another 5 categories. I've got 5 movies in each category. That's 10 more movies for your Grindhouse education. Alright, I still know how to count my fingers. Alright, I'm going to use different categories from the first time, except for this first one, Blaxploitation. It's such a huge and influential category of Grindhouse films. Doing just the 5 last time's not nearly enough, so here's 5 more you definitely have to check out. Number 1, Blackula. This is probably the most famous of the Blaxploitation horror films, and it's pretty cool. But William Marshall is wonderful as Blackula. He has this great voice, and it adds a lot of, I don't know, just like cool, like regal style to the character. Number 2, Shaft. I don't know how I avoided this one on the last time I did this list, but yeah, Shaft. I mean, that's like the first Blaxploitation film, together with, Sweet Sweetback's badass song. And Shaft is by far the most successful of the Blaxploitation films in terms of, cultural reach. Number 3, Watermelon Man. A year before Melvin Van Peebles did Sweet Sweetback's badass song, he did Watermelon Man. It's a comedy starring Godfrey Cambridge. He's wonderful. And the story is a white guy who's Godfrey Cambridge and whiteface wakes up one day as a black guy. And you might think, oh, this is going to be one of those, like, the white guy learns some important lessons and then everything goes back to normal. No, that's not the story. It has much more in common with something like Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis than with something like, what was that shitty comedy in the 80s? Soul Man. Number 4, The Human Tornado. This is the second Dolomite film from Rudy Ray Moore. Rudy Ray Moore, he's one of those guys, you either love him or you hate him, and I just love him. And I picked The Human Tornado because I actually like it more than the first one, although I think both are worth watching. And the last one, Emma May. Not too many people know about this one. It's kind of been forgotten. Normally, when people think of Blaxploitation films, they think of, pimps and drug pushers and, superhero types, investigators like Shaft and whatever. This is totally different from all of that. This is a family drama. It's about a Southern girl who moves to Los Angeles to live with some extended family. I think her mom dies or something. I don't remember. She gets in a relationship with this guy who's not so great. And yeah, it's just a really great family drama, and yeah, it's not the kind of movie people normally think of when they think of Blaxploitation films, but they should. It's a wonderful film, highly recommended. Category number 2, Hicksploitation. Well, unlike some of the other categories, Hicksploitation's not a genre. This can be any kind of genre that plays with these rural tropes. So these are movies that play on mountain people, southern fried people, hayseeds, rednecks, whatever you want to call them, they're the characters. But beyond that, it can be any kind of movie. Number 1, Sassy Sue. There was a short-lived period in the 1970s where this guy, Bethel Buckaloo, did a number of these like southern fried softcore porns, I guess, sexploitation films. But some of them are really funny, particularly the ones that have John Toll in them. And Sassy Sue has John Toll. And Sassy Sue also has a channel favorite, Colleen Brennan. Yeah, the women are pretty hot, the men are pretty funny. Yeah, I recommend these Hicksploitation, sexploitation films. Start maybe with Sassy Sue. Number 2, Mudhoney. Yeah, Russ Meyer, he did a Hicksploitation film, and it's really good. Some people consider it to be his best film. I think this is Roger Ebert's favorite Russ Meyer film. Could be wrong about that, though. Number 3, Gator Bait with Claudia Jennings. Normally, when we think of Hicksploitation films, we have sort of city people who come into contact with country people. But in this one, it's kind of special because we have country people, like the country sheriff, and he's coming into contact with, nearly feral swamp people, of which Claudia Jennings is one. Number 4, 2000 Maniacs. I said in the last video I don't particularly like Herschel Gordon Lewis. I do like this one though. This is a pretty cool horror film. The story is, you get some city people who show up in this town celebrating, I think it's the centennial or something. It must be the centennial of like the end of the Civil War. And then they're all tortured and killed by the crazy townspeople. Yeah, pretty cool movie. Definitely my favorite Herschel Gordon Lewis movie. Number 5, Mother's Day, a trauma film, but not a trauma film from Lloyd Kaufman, a trauma film from his brother, Charles Kaufman. This is a pretty nasty movie. It's kind of a rape revenge film, typical like city people come into contact with nasty country people, and boy, it is something else. It's got a couple brothers, and they do horrible things at the behest of their twisted mother. Pretty extreme, kind of crazy, but it's a satire. Yeah, try to figure out what it's satirizing. Category number 3, women in prison. Yeah, I've covered a couple of women in prison films on the channel. They've been around a long time. There's tons of these things. It was actually pretty hard to pick 5. So let's see how I did. Number 1, a 2-for-1 deal from Jack Hill. The Big Dollhouse and The Big Birdcage. Both of these were made around the same time. Maybe they actually were at the same time. The first one, The Big Dollhouse, is more serious, and the second one, The Big Birdcage, is sort of a parody of women in prison films. And this is one of those women in prison films that was filmed in the Philippines. There's tons of these things. I like the second one better, The Big Birdcage, because of that sort of parody element to it. But both of them are pretty fun. They both have Pam Grier and Sid Haig, and they are just fantastic. Love them to pieces. And yeah, this would make a pretty good double feature, actually. Number 2, Black Mama, White Mama. Another Pam Grier film. I love her, so let's put her on again. This one is kind of based on the Defiant ones, where you have two people chained together and they have to work out their differences in order to escape. Unlike the Defiant ones, it does not really play on any racial issues. Instead, it plays on other kinds of issues. And Pam's co-star in this one, Margaret Markov, she's quite lovely, so definitely worth watching for her and Pam Grier. Chained Heat. This one is all about the sleaze. It ticks all of the women in prison boxes. We've got the shower scenes, we've got sadistic guards, we've got torture, we've got murder, there's some rape, and the cast here is amazing. We've got Sybil Danning, John Vernon, Linda Blair, Tamara Dobson. Yeah, this must watch. It is a bit sort of meaner in tone than some other women in prison movies, which is maybe the one thing I don't like about it. But you gotta love it for the cast and for the sleaze factor. John Vernon, for example, plays the warden, and he has a jacuzzi in his office. That should give you some idea about what you're in for. Number 4, Ilsa, harem keeper of the oil sheiks. Yeah, this is a women in prison film. Sure, she keeps women sort of locked up and tortures them, so women in prison film. Diane Thorne is back as Ilsa. What's notable about this one is it tried to be a little less extreme than She-Wolf of the SS in order to try to secure an R rating. It's still pretty nasty though, so it's not going to disappoint too much in that regard. But where it lacks maybe in some of the torture elements, it more than makes up for it in the cast elements. This is a regular who's who of sexploitation films from the 70s. Ushi is here, Haji is here, Colleen Brennan here, Diane Thorne of course is here. My only complaint with this movie is Diane Thorne doesn't show us quite enough. But everyone else does, so definitely worth checking out. Finally, number 5, Caged Heat. Did you know that Academy Award-winning director Jonathan Demme made a women in prison film? It's true, he did, and it's actually pretty good. All the major tropes are ticked here. We've got shower scenes, we've got sadistic guards, a sadistic warden, some really tense scenes, crawling through the air ducts trying to deliver food, Die Hard style. And overall, the characters are pretty interesting. For Russ Meyer fans, the main gal is Erica Gavin, who we know from Vixen. Category number 4, Roughies. In my last video I did sexploitation films, but I concentrated mostly on the nudie cuties and the sex comedies. Those are the ones that I like the most. But I also really like Roughies, so let's do those this time. Number 1, Russ Meyer's Lorna. Some people consider this to be the very first Roughie. I don't think that's true, actually. Herschel Gordon Lewis did Scum of the Earth a year before this one in 1963. But this is much better than Scum of the Earth, so let's start with this one. Not super rough, but pretty cool movie. Number 2, well, I'm cheating now, and I'm going to mention a trilogy. So this is a 3-for-1 deal. You gotta check out the Michael and Roberta Findlay Flesh trilogy. These movies are basically slasher films before slasher films existed. Tons of nudity, tons of violence, some just killer one-liners. They're sexy, they're funny, they're just completely wild, and I love them. Number 3, more cheating, another trilogy, the Olga series with Audrey Campbell. If you like blood-sucking freaks, you'll like the Olga series. And if you like the Ilsa movies, you'll like the Olga series. It's very much in common with these things. Number 3, Aroused from 1966. This one is more of a psychological thriller. In it, a serial killer is targeting prostitutes. And this one has some of the best acting that you'll see in these sort of low-budget sexploitation films. The story is pretty cool. If you like Psycho, but wish that, it had been more violent and had more nudity, check out Aroused. And finally, number 5, The Defilers, the directorial debut of David Friedman. You should know his name. He was a legendary exploitation producer. You've probably seen some of the movies he produced: Blood Feast, 2000 Maniacs. He produced Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, also like Love Camp 7 and She-Freak. Yeah, tons of stuff. Finally, Giallo films, the Italian slashers, if you will, spaghetti slashers. These were highly influential movies. We probably wouldn't have American slashers without them. And the two main figures were Dario Argento and Mario Bava. And for my list of 5, I'm going to limit myself to just one per director. Otherwise, the whole thing would be Argento and Bava films. So, number 1, Deep Red, Dario Argento. I think this is probably most people's favorite Giallo film. I don't know about that. Central Viewing, Dario Argento, Deep Red, Creepy Doll, Important Mirrors. Pretty cool. Number 2, A Bay of Blood, Mario Bava. This one's much more slashery than something like Deep Red. And in fact, some of the kills were, let's say, stolen by Friday the 13th. So yeah, check out check out Bay of Blood and look for what it influenced. Number 3, Torso by Sergio Martino. Oh, I really like this one. This one is, there's some girls who are in like this villa, and there's a killer who's taking them out and chopping them into pieces. Yeah, lots of fun. The end of this movie is really great. There's this like sort of drawn out cat and mouse sequence with one of the girls and the killer still in the house. Really, really cool. Highly recommend Torso. Number 4, What Have You Done to Solange from Massimo Dallamano. This one is a little bit on the sleazier side of Giallo. Not as sleazy as something like Strip Nude for Your Killer. That one's pretty cool. But definitely on the sleazier side. It sort of sexualizes Catholic schoolgirls and then it kills them with a knife up somewhere. But the acting here is pretty cool, and the story here is really the standout. In some of the lesser Giallo films, the killer's motivations are like, what? That's stupid. Not here. Here, the writing's pretty good. The sort of final kill reveal is really interesting. There's lots of cool like red herrings. Yeah, this movie is really great. Check it out. And finally, number 5. This one's a personal fave. It's not influential or anything or important, and plenty of people would be like, oh, you had 5 Giallo films and that's what you went with, and number 5? Yeah, well, it's my list. If you want to make a list, make a list. I'll watch it. But my number 5 is Delirium from, not Mario Bava, his son Lamberto Bava. Lots of cool things about this one. I like how in the POV shots, the killer sees his victims as monsters. That's pretty cool. But, the best part is the protagonist, played by the lovely Selena Grandi. She is, well, Grandi. So there you go, 25 more Grindhouse movies. And if you watch all of these and you watch all the ones that I mentioned in the first video, you're up to over 50 movies at this point, which I guess means not really a beginner anymore. They grow up so fast.